I'm Jerry Kosak. I am the head of the guitar department here at McNally Smith, and I've been in this position. Well, not this position. I'm sitting. See, I'm going to probably try and be a stand-up or a sit-down comedian here, but we'll deal with it. For about 2 years, I've been doing this, and I've been teaching at the school for about 5 years. Originally from Pittsburgh, I went to school at Arizona State in northern Arizona, a little bit non-traditional. My course of study was, the undergrad was classical guitar performance, and then in graduate school I did musicology or music history and guitar performance. And then in '94 I moved to Minneapolis and have been teaching at the school here, like I said, since about 2003. So I think the most interesting thing to me is that I didn't pick up a guitar till I was 20. So I went to Arizona State to be a biology major, and there are only 2 times that I remember seeing my mother cry. One of them was when I told her I was going to become a music major. The other one I think was when I was born, but I get that secondhand, so I'm not sure. So I really think that starting late does 2 things. One, and I'll try not to self-deprecate too much, but I always feel like I'm catching up to my peers, because that's the reality of it. The other thing is that helps me in my position teaching here at the college is I know what it's like to be a 19 or 20-year-old student and really know nothing about music. So it helps me empathize with a number of our incoming students, and rather than just dismissing them and saying, well, you really don't have the skills to be here, I can say, well, so did I not have the skills, and a couple of my instructors hauled me along, and so it just takes you a little bit more effort, but you can still get the job done. This actually is a special guitar. Bruce is going to love this, getting a little bit of promo. This is made by Bruce and Matt Petros. It's an endorsement deal. I actually have two of the guitars that I play were made for me. This is by Petros Guitars, and they're over near Appleton, Wisconsin. It's one of these small independent luthiers. I think they make 30 to 35 guitars a year. And I met Bruce when playing at a festival near Milwaukee some years ago, and we struck up a conversation, and I knew that his guitars, there was something special about them. I could just tell. And a number of years went by, and we stayed in touch. And then we worked out this deal where he built me the guitar, and I play it, because these are, I don't know if the camera can show it or what, but I mean, this is like a work of art. It's the nicest guitar that I have ever played, and I get to play it, and he does all the work in his shop, and all the quality is second to none, and Cocobolo and Adirondack spruce, and it ends up just, I think we're in E. I mean, it's a really nice sounding guitar. And he also lets me bang on it, which is something that I, do, the tapping on the body, and we have a really good working relationship in that I know my previous guitar, won't mention any names there, I actually cracked from hitting it, and Bruce just told me if you break this one, you're hitting it too hard. So he said that it's okay to whack away at it, and that. So that's what's really nice. And then he put the little hip shot on here, which is something that I first saw Michael Manring, the bass player. He's got that all on all of his tuners, and so I try to incorporate that into some of the more the more recent pieces that I'm writing, and how this impacts what I'm doing is. Like I said, I was classically trained, and I took all of that information and just applied it to what I was wanting to do, because I remember while studying in college, all of my private teachers told me that I had to quit playing electric guitar, which I never really liked, and that seems to be a pervasive attitude amongst classical guitarists. I'm on record now saying that, but they felt that it was going to prevent me from doing whatever with classical. And maybe that was their way of saying we see some potential in you, buddy. Don't wreck it by playing this other thing. But I really wanted to be a rock and roller, and I think I studied classical so that my mother would not think I was a heathen. And then just over the years, I've just applied all of that to, and I've gravitated back toward mostly playing solo guitar. And so my attempt is to try and sound kind of like the whole band as much as I can, playing bass lines, playing drum parts, melody, chords. Yeah, this might not come off the way I like, but this is it's a piece that I wrote. I call it "Waiting for Columbus," and it's the idea that influences what I write and how I write it. A year or so ago, I had this idea of the Native Americans sitting on the East Coast waiting to be discovered. And one of my first jobs after graduating from Arizona State was I taught at a school for Native American students. So there it was very interesting because I was a minority, and I remember they really did not like the concept of being discovered, and they said it's more that you guys just found out we were here. And so that was the idea that I had for the song. And then this was shortly after I got the guitar from Bruce, and I had the hip shot and thought, well, I can combine two unrelated songs. So the first thing was just this little rhythmic thing. And then it goes into this other thing that just for drama purposes, I decided to change my hands over. I think I can do it sitting down. Then I'm in a different tuning, and then it goes on to a different part of the song. a distinct voice. I heard it, and I think I heard this when I was in school some years ago, that everything's been done, every note's been played. That's how you can identify Pat Metheny a mile away or Jimi Hendrix. If you listen, you just know. The thing is that separates players like that is I believe there's a magic in your fingers that if you're really, and this is the Zen portion of my interview, if you're really in touch with the big picture and you're living music and you're really an emotional person and you're open to that possibility, and whatever that means, it's going to flow out of you. You know, like B.B. King says, he just plays what he hears or feels inside of him. And if you can reach a point where you're comfortable and turn off the outside distractions and turn off the monitor up here that says, oh, you can't do that. That sounds like this, or this has been done. You open yourself up to the possibility of doing something that's unusual or might be new to you. And then I think you, just over the years, for better or worse, you play things over and over again, and you get a different take on them. An example that happened in a class for me yesterday, I'm doing this advanced classical guitar repertoire class, and it focuses primarily on the music of Villa-Lobos, who was a Brazilian composer and wrote a tremendous music for the guitar. And we were working on his Prelude Number 1 yesterday. I learned that I've been playing that piece longer than the students have been alive. And that's a very unsettling thought on certain levels. But as we were playing it, I had to look at the music for the first time in God knows how long. And there were things that I wasn't even aware of because I looked at the class and said, I don't count this. I am not aware of what meter it's in or anything. I just play it because I've been doing it so long. And then I began to realize that I had left, and just, a little bit of that. Yeah, I've been playing a long time. And it goes on and on. But there were little things in the chords. I mean, just for instance, I didn't realize that C was supposed to be in there. So it was over the years, I've just changed things for better or worse. And I remember an instance playing in a master class years ago for George Sacalario. He was a student of Segovia. And he just ripped me apart on stage because I was playing one of the Villa-Lobos preludes and I made a change in it. And I didn't realize I made a change in it because I was playing from memory. And the lesson that I learned, though, was good. He said, before I go and perform something, I have an image of the score in my mind. I know what it is. I can close my eyes and see that. At that time, I was 24. I couldn't understand that. But now I know what he means, that I'm going to remember that in this piece, when it goes, that's an A minor add 9 there, and I know that is there, and I can see that in the score. But yesterday in class, I didn't know it was there until I read it, and then I sort of stopped while I was playing, and it was interesting. So I was able to bring that to the students and say, you have to be somewhat careful when you're attempting to create your own voice, that you're at least aware of what you're doing. In this case, I need to be responsible to what Villa-Lobos wrote, and so that if I'm challenged and somebody says, you're playing that differently, that at least I can say, yes, I am, and I'm okay with that, or for my purposes, playing at a club as opposed to playing at a recital hall. People don't care. they're more interested in the vibe that you lay down, and that's so that's part of for me, developing a voice and then taking those ideas and interjecting that attitude into the pieces that I write. For instance, I've I think taken a lot from the music of Villalobos because I spent a lot of time working on it as a student, and it figures into a lot of the way that I approach the guitar, at least writing for classical and that. I always had a difficult time with Segovia because he really hated the electric guitar, from what I know. And so just hearing Jimmy Page and Segovia, I'm sure Segovia is turning over in his grave right now as we speak. But what we try to focus on for the students here is that we want them to be able to make a living as a guitar player, and we want you to be able to go out tonight. If you get the opportunity, somebody says, hey, I need a guitarist for a wedding, or there's going to be this reception. I remember when I was in school, now because of Sarah Jane Olsen, who's the Sandra O'Connor, sorry. I was at Arizona at the time, and when she was selected to the Supreme Court, I was called to play at a reception for her. And it was great because I had all my recital material and I could play for hours. And we're trying to help the students see that you're going to get these opportunities and you can get paid reasonably well. And further, you can establish a business playing for weddings and make a lot of money. Figure if somebody can figure out how to play for divorces, then you're going to have the whole market cornered and you retire early and move to the Caribbean. The other side is you're going to get opportunities to play rock and blues and jazz. And whether it's sitting in for someone or doing a recording date, or, as some of our students get the opportunity to go on the road with bands. What we try to emphasize here is more or less being a well-rounded player, knowing stylistically how to fit in with virtually any style of guitar. Well, the one thing that I feel fortunate about here at this school is, like just before I came down here, I had a classical guitar technique class. It's a second semester class that all the people take, and they play nylon string guitars, and we try to teach them the right way, dare I say, the traditional classical approach. And we really try to emphasize listening a lot, getting outside of your comfort zone, because, say a kid has been listening to, Iron Maiden or Dream Theater, just the metal stuff, and they don't know anything else. You really try to emphasize, well, listen to these things, and by having the opportunity to play for the students in class, just to watch their expressions and have them say, wow, I didn't know that was out there. That is really cool. That's one thing. And I, again, by virtue of what I said earlier, that I was studying classical guitar, but none of my teachers wanted me to play electric. And I learned to it's like there's a switch in my head that you say, okay, I'm playing classical. Think like Segovia. Sit the right way. Try to sound beautiful. Think, what are people listening for in this kind of music? Then if I have to play my own stuff, I can be a little more aggressive and make more, ambient noise on the guitar, if you will. I don't have to be so clean. And then if I'm playing with a band and playing blues or rock or something, then I'm not using the thumb pick because it still works best for me to use a flat pick. So I over the years worked on those different techniques, and I try to tell the kids it's like one of those amp modelers, that you just turn a switch and now it's a 58 Bassman, and now it's a 66 Fender Deluxe Reverb, and that's what you do in your head. But the downside of that is it's like being a jack of all trades and a master of none. I wish that I could just say, I just want to do this one thing. And maybe that's what my classical teachers were saying. They wanted me to play classical, and I wanted to be in a band. And I think my original earliest influence was the band Yes in the early 70s, and Steve Howe was playing all these different guitars and all these different styles, and that's what I wanted to be. And that's very difficult, and I'm still trying to catch up to that today. But I think an awareness of different styles listening, whether it's jazz or blues or funk or classical, you really encourage the students to listen. I know as head of the department here, it's really nice. I get to call a lot of shots that is still unusual for me to have to do, and I get to buy a lot of guitar CDs for the department or for the library, and that's really fun to then encourage students, go listen to this, although most of them just want to go to YouTube and watch it. But we still try to put a big emphasis on listening. The emphasis on listen to as much as you can, and make that as important as your actual playing time. That you really need to be aware of what's out there, and then what we can provide is the how-to. Whether it's playing blues or jazz or reggae. See, there's a two-chord sequence that, not to boast about us so much, but this thing we call contemporary music literature, and it's where the students come in their first year of study, and they take this class. It's a performance-based class, and every 2 weeks you get 2 new songs, different style. It may be 70s pop or R&B or reggae or swing. Students are usually bummed we don't do metal, but we do rock. They get to play Fire by Jimi Hendrix and Back in the USSR by the Beatles. And on top of that, they're getting to deal with reading a chart and interacting with others. And that's really great, because 2 main levels that functions on is, one, they're being exposed to music that many of them have never heard. Few of them are familiar with Motown, and that when they come in here, it's just not their bag. And the other thing is, a great number of guitar students these days have no band experience. They sit in front of the computer and play with videos, and they're very competent at that level, but it's difficult. It's very different than interacting with real human beings. And yeah, you know that. So we give them that opportunity right off the bat, and it really seems to work. My hero, well, Steve Howe, without question, and Robin Trower is a huge fan of mine. I don't know if he's a fan of mine. I am a fan of his. Actually, he's going to be here. We have a summer rock camp or guitar camp, and he's going to be playing across the street at the Fitzgerald, and the camp is going to get to go over and be part of his sound check, which I'm really excited about. But the role of the hero, I think it's to give you, it's like the saints in the Catholic Church, that the reason they are there, I believe, is to give you a model to look up to. We don't know whether they did these great works that are ascribed to them or not, but it's to help you believe that the impossible isn't impossible, that if you work hard and not just believe or dream, but if you work, or since I'm on the religious thing, as St. Augustine said, pray as though everything depends on God, work as though everything depends on you. And if you approach your music that way and you have people and say, man, Segovia, just when I listen to him play, I just get an ear-to-ear grin, and that just does it for me. Or, for me, Steve Howe, I listen and I said, I want to do that. And but you have to temper it, because I can think of another example, if I dare to say this. At one point, I was really interested in Phil Keaggy. I don't know if you know of Phil as a guitar player, but a lot of what I do on this acoustic guitar is influenced by him, the looping and all that. Phil is an awesome player. And at one point I learned a ton of his music. The first band I was in, we played 15 Phil Keaggy tunes. He was a Christian rocker, and at that time that was really important in my life. And then one day I just realized that they already got Phil Keaggy. They don't need another Phil Keaggy, or they don't need another Segovia or Jimmy Page or Wes Montgomery. They just need who you are. So what I do, or hopefully and try to encourage students, is listen to your heroes, be motivated by them, but take what they have to offer and recycle it into something that's unique. I don't feel that I am there, but some people, in all humility, I mean, they have heard me play recently and just said that very thing, that you look like you're beyond that, and I don't feel that way. I think it's when you don't worry about whether you played a rest stroke or a free stroke, or whether you used your first finger or your second. You're in touch with the music and you're trying to get a sound. It's what I imagine the great jazz soloists can do. They're not thinking, "Oh, am I playing a Mixolydian scale or Dorian? This is the note that I need," and they're not worried about that. I think that's hopefully an ongoing quest for all of us. But that's where I try to instruct students. That's why you work on technique. That it's not an end in itself, but it's a means to free you up so that you can say, "Oh, I hear this idea, and I'm just going to react to the situation and do that." It's difficult being classically trained because it's just been drummed into my head that there are the notes on the page. You play them this way, and you work on this fingering, and that's something that I work to constantly try to escape from, if you will. To me, that is really important to know what a big world it is, but at the same time, I think an individual can only absorb so much. And again, this is back to why my starting at age 20, I think, has been beneficial as an educator, because I can constantly go back to that time, and I remember very clearly how I could only take in so much. But yet at the same time, when a teacher or a peer would turn me on to a new performer or a new style of music, it was like the skies opened and we saw the Holy Grail, because I was fortunate enough to be hooked up in college with a lot of studio art people, photography people, dance people, and we were nuts. We would listen to Tibetan monks, Apache, peyote healing chants, anything. I remember the Residents, and just totally off-the-wall band from the Bay Area. We would listen to the most obscure stuff, along with Schoenberg and Hendrix, and just we were in a band trying to do all of that. And yes, you're trying too hard at that point, but as the dust settles, it seems like what's really important and foundational stays with you, and that influences you. So with the students, I realize they can only absorb so much, and I just tell them, be patient. You're here for 4 years if you're in the bachelor's program, and a lot's going to happen in 4 years. Just let it happen naturally or organically. That you learn this, and say, you don't have to know everything about it, but you learn this, and eventually, if you're really stretching and trying to be creative, I think that's going to come out in your playing, and it will have a positive impact. So I think it's important, but it has to occur somewhat naturally, or it becomes forced. I don't pursue rap and hip hop, but I have a ton of early blues: Robert Johnson, Son House, Muddy Waters, Tampa Red, Johnny Winter, the entire Yes folio, all the Pat Metheny and Wes Montgomery that I can get my hands on. Bill Bruford and Alan Holdsworth, that type of fusion I really like. But then obscure things, a Tuvan group by the name of Hun Hertu that do throat singing where they can hum multiple pitches. They're absolutely fascinating. I've seen them perform twice, and it makes the hair on my arms just stand up. That sort of thing. There's probably a fair amount of classical guitar. I guess what I've never really had is pop music. I've always been an idealist, to a fault, because that almost goes against our curriculum here. I think the most pop-oriented music I've ever had was Rush and the Police. That is really widely popular. That I've actively listened to, because I admit that I am not aware of a lot of trends, and they're probably going to hate me in admin saying this, but I consider myself the idealist influence here. Say Dream, go for what you don't think can be done, and not necessarily just because it's pyrotechnics, but it has to be musical, and really search that way. So I think most of my music that I listen to is not necessarily mainstream, although Pat Metheny seems mainstream to me. Yes, but a very poor one, I think, in that I have never really focused on managing my career as well as I should. And I hear a lot of people say that I've I've yeah, I guess I sometimes get so absorbed in what I'm doing in practicing and refining the music, and that I fail to follow up in a business sense the way I should. So fortunately, here at this school, there are people that are better at that. We have a whole business department, and I'm learning a lot from them. And a lot of that, I think, that I'll still try to impart to the students is go after this, become tech savvy, learn what an engineer does, so that you don't walk in there and give them carte blanche to make a sound that you don't want, or learn how to market yourself on the internet, or how to develop a resume, and that. I mean, yes, I can do those things, and I think I can write, English language well. It's I think I'm not an overachiever. I don't have to play every gig and get every accolade. I'm like right now. I'm very happy being part of the guitar department here. I feel very grateful to be part of this, and it provides me a lot of opportunities to play and to share what I do, and I really enjoy that. So I don't feel the need to be hopping a plane every weekend going somewhere. I'd rather have my sanity a little bit more. That is, I don't know, I guess I will say, because right now I am overdue for a solo recording, and I just haven't liked anything that I've recorded. I've written a bunch of material, and I use a Gibson Echoplex, the modern one that's a looper, and I have a bunch of stuff, but I have a sound apparently in my head that I don't know how to realize in this reality, and that thwarts me. At some point, I think I will, like with my previous recordings, I just say that's good enough, and because you can spend thousands, and I don't have I don't have 110,000 to spend on editing. So what I tend to do is try to play it as perfectly as I'm able, which usually isn't very perfect, and allow myself 3 takes, because at the end of that I just am mush, and then I have to go home and make notes of what I think might fit, and then we patch it together. The problem that I have, and I think this is just my temperament, is I don't like a lot of choice. If you give me too many options, I become confused. So having a digital reverb is frustrating for me because I just want an echo. I mean, I don't know how to describe it in verbal terms, but then I'll usually know it when it's there. And so I just figure that a recording is sort of a snapshot at that time, and it's good and bad, and hopefully my technique has allowed me to produce the tone that is going to be good regardless of whether I played all the right notes. Because I think for me, that's the main entrance to music is tone. If somebody has what I consider wonderful tone, I'm theirs. I'll listen. But if I don't like their tone for whatever reason, they can be the greatest player in the world, and I can acknowledge that, but it does nothing for me. I that has worked for me, not just from a cost standpoint, but really, I mean, if usually before I go into the studio, I've been playing these pieces for like a year, and at this point, it's longer than that. And so if I just have to get over it and say, like it or not, recording doesn't lie, whereas a snapshot can distort things. Really, what you play into the microphone, to a large degree, I think that's what's there, and it's sobering. Sometimes I think I'm better than I am, and I have to deal with it. When you're looking for a guitar, I remember something that I think it was Robin Trower. I read an article years ago. I mean, he's always playing Strats. That's what I've always played primarily. And he said, don't plug it in right away. Get somewhere where you can hear, so that rules out Guitar Center because you can't hear in there. But listen to the acoustic properties of that. You know, play a chord. Can you feel the neck? Is it vibrating? Because if it's got a relatively pleasant sound acoustically, that's going to be enhanced when you amplify it. I don't know if we can say this, but there's a saying I'm sure you're familiar with: you can't polish a turd, or you can't fix it in the mix, or something might be better. That if it doesn't sound good unamplified, it's only going to sound worse. So you really listen, and I think the visual, the aesthetic is important. I tell the parents of young students and say, you know, they'll say, my son or daughter wants to play guitar. I told them they have to play an acoustic guitar before they can play electric. And I will sometimes say, but if their heart is in the electric, if that's what they want to do, you know, that's going to be their motivation. Let them, that's what they're after, that look. The color of it. I mean, I'm actually guilty of going into Guitar Center to buy a set of strings, and I found this beautiful tangerine orange Strat, and I bought it because I just wanted an orange Strat, and it's my number one electric guitar. It's a brilliant guitar, but it happened to be this like Corvette orange, and I thought this is great. So the aesthetics are important. For an acoustic guitar, playability, well, for any guitar really, the playability. You know, if I tell students, take what material or songs you know how to play, take them with you and play them. And if you can't play them, if it's physically difficult or impossible, then there's a problem with that guitar, and that could be new or used. So I think really the sound, maybe the sound and the aesthetics are the two most important. But, you know, comfort. One drawback to this guitar, this is a grand concert is what they call it, and it's much wider and bigger than I used to use a Martin OM, which is narrower, and it's a much more comfortable guitar. This is bigger, but I just learned to adapt. And sometimes, you know, if a student, dare I say, if they're overweight or something and you know, they've got a stomach, you know, you want a guitar that you can bring in close, and maybe you want a narrower guitar or something. But you know, you try to not just get swept away with the look or the color, but really how it works for you, how it feels, and then how it sounds. I can easily use at least 4 guitars in, you know, my ideal type of a performance. Like I'll be doing a faculty concert here soon, and I'll be playing classical. So I'll have my nylon string. I'll have this. I also have several metal body guitars made by National. That's a totally different vibe for doing the Delta blues type thing. And then a Strat and a Les Paul. So actually I'm going to bring 5 guitars to that show, and they're all performing a different function. You could argue that one solid body could fit all, but and that still brings me down to 4. But that's the thing. It's I feel that guitar music is somewhat different than, and I may be wrong, but my perspective is it's different than violin or fiddle music, because the difference between a violin and a fiddle is your persuasion. If you're classically trained, it's a violin. If you're playing like Django or, you know, Appalachian music, it's a fiddle, but they're physically the same instrument. And guitar, I mean, I can play Bach on this. It doesn't sound good. And certainly if I wanted to do Power of Love by Hendrix, this isn't my first choice to do that. You know, so really it seems to me that guitar necessitates, it's just become culturally a big animal. Well, I mentioned the National, those Resophonic guitars. They're I mean, either you like that sound or you don't. But you can only get that sound from that guitar. There's no digital modeling that's going to do that. And yeah, it's a very, very specific tone. But if you want to play like Son House or John Mooney or somebody, it's like you need that guitar. And that's something that just brings me great joy to, even if I'm going to do it for two songs, I'm happy because I can produce the sound that I want. And it's really a lot of work because you have to schlep a lot of gear, but that's my choice, to do that. And yeah, it's very different for guitar.
Well, thanks very much for talking to us today.
You're welcome. Thank you, John.